What is up, everyone? Volathis here and Vicolan. This is episode 2 of the VV's DLC podcast, and this subject is going to be on expansions. We thought this would be an appropriate subject considering that the Elder Scrolls Online Morrowind expansion is coming out next week on June 6th, and we also have Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood expansion headed for early access on June 16th that I'm looking forward to very much. Without further ado, we're going to hop into here to a few topics. And as you can tell here, we sort of switched up the routine now. We're moving over to more of a YouTube recording for this podcast. So we're going to start out here with basically what an expansion is. So what are expansions? They are additional content added to the current game, much like DLC, but usually on a larger scale. And it usually adds a lot more content to the game. Usually there's a lot of content that we expect. So usually there are some common updates expected within the expansion. Usually we get some kind of level increase, anywhere from 5 to 10 levels. And with those new levels, we usually get new spells or new passives or talents that we'll be looking forward to. In some expansions, of course, we also get either some new classes and or new races to be added, as well as sometimes they will add new crafting or gathering classes, which of course in turn will provide new recipes to add in with the new levels and everything. And sometimes, like in Warlords of Draenor for World of Warcraft, we didn't get any new races or classes, but we got instead was basically a complete overhaul of the game. They removed a lot of stats, added some new ones, and did a flat stat nerf to the game as well. And eventually, in some expansions, you get a graphical update simply because if you leave these games alone, they're going to look like they're from the Stone Age. Example I would think of is like Final Fantasy XI. The game has been around for many years. In fact, it recently shut down their servers on the PlayStation Network, but the graphics of that look comparable to probably what RuneScape is now. And they stayed at that those graphics for a very long time. They didn't update it. And of course, with these expansions as well, this adds new stories, new quest lines, and of course new raids for us to experience. And in a way, these expansions are needed in the community. Part of that is expansions provide a clean slate for everyone. When these expansions launch, everyone's starting at ground zero. No one's going to be the top tier anymore. Some of you might be a few levels behind or something like that, but it doesn't matter because the people that were the top tier are no longer the top tier, and the gear they currently have is only going to last them for so long, and they usually will get rid of it in exchange for new gear that they're going to get from quests. And the other thing is that, these expansions will help bring back player base. It usually helps bring back people that have quit the game before, and of course as well provide a source of income for the developers, as usually these expansions also take time to work on. Alright, and now Vicolan and I have some basic expansion questions for each other. We're going to talk about like our favorites and our not so favorite expansions. So Vicolan, what expansion did you enjoy the most?
For me, it would probably have to be Wrath of the Lich King. It was the expansion that I rated the most. I actually led a few different guilds throughout the expansion, and we cleared the Nax 25 and all of Obsidian Sanctum, Ruby Sanctum, and then I did join another guild at some point, and it was probably the most fun I had throughout my entire experience of playing WoW so far. I met a lot of good friends in that guild, which he's probably one of my closest friends, even though he lives out of state. We play games on a regular basis together.
Well, and for me, Wrath of the Witch King would be another favorite as well. They added, of course, more features that became the staple in the MMORPG community, one being the Duty Finder, which at first was very fun if you were not a priest, mage, or druid, because if you were flying on your flying mount and accepted your queue to the dungeon, when you came back out, you would probably fall to your death. It was a whole lot of fun when you forget about that. Oh, and Paladin, if you can time your bubble just right. And
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong. This is also about the time when was it 25 and 10 mans became kind of the standard for raiding? Or was
Yes.
it? Okay. It was either that or Burning Crusade, I think. So.
Or wait. Yeah, it was Burning Crusade, my bad.
Okay. But this was a very interesting time. They threw the lore right up in your face, which I hadn't experienced. I mean, the lore has always been there, but it was more direct. It was more like, the only way you're going to be able to skip this is start this cinematic quest line and go make a sandwich or something. So,
Yeah.
of course, with our favorites, we got to talk about our not so favorites. What expansion did you enjoy the least, Vicolan?
It's a very hard toss-up between Mists of Pandaria and Warlords of Draenor. I would probably have to say Warlords was my least favorite.
Really?
They just kind of dropped the ball. I enjoyed Mists a lot up to Siege of Orgrimmar lasting like a whole year.
Okay.
Whereas Warlords, the only thing I really enjoyed at all about Warlords was the garrison, to be honest. It was like player housing, pretty much the closest thing we're probably ever gonna see to player housing in WoW. I would love to see guild housing in the future in WoW, but I seriously doubt we do.
Okay. Fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you say that revamping is also maybe what impacted your decision? Because wasn't this the time when they revamped a lot of things about WoW, like your stats?
No, not so much that. The stats I don't really care about. It's mostly like interactive things in the game that I really care about.
Gotcha. Okay. And for me, I stopped playing WoW and Mist, so I don't have a comment on Warlords of Draenor, but I'd have to say Mist was my least favorite, mostly because of Siege of Orgrimmar, just like you. Hopefully we won't have to keep trash-talking Mist of Pandaria for much longer in these podcasts, but I'll also get rid of my hot air and frustrations about it. Other than that, I mean, they tried to implement a lot of things that they ended up using later, but they didn't stay what they were in Mist. So, if anything, I guess they used Mist as an opportunity to try the new things, see what they need to go back to, and what needed tweaked. Then, Vicolan, what was your first MMORPG expansion?
My first expansion was the Burning Crusade for World of Warcraft. I started playing towards the end of Burning Crusade, so I didn't get to experience the full expansion on level. The only raid I got to do was Karazhan a few times, which was a lot of fun. And with Legion, they brought back Kara in the form of a 5-man dungeon.
Interesting.
Which was even more fun, in my opinion, than the raid was back then. It was like a reintroduction to Karazhan.
They brought back the nostalgia, you would say?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
There were some of the same bosses, kind of, but the boss fights were like completely different. So it was a new experience, and the fights themselves were rather difficult until you learn the mechanics. I mean, that's a given with most boss encounters. This more so because it was a mythic only dungeon when they first released it. They just put in a patch like a month or two ago that added in the heroic version, so it's a little easier. I can't remember if they added in a normal version for it too, but I know they added in the heroic version, and they did split it into 2 separate dungeons because there's like, I can't remember if it's 11 or 14 bosses.
Yeah, there's a lot in Karazhan for sure.
So they split that up so that way you don't have to dedicate a full, probably now, hour and a half to clear all of the bosses. Okay. So now you can just go in for like a half hour to do one half and be done with it.
Nice. Well, definitely if I ever come back to WoW, I'd probably check that out because Burning Crusade was also my first expansion. Now, you came in later, so you probably didn't experience the whole fiasco when it went live, because it
No.
was definitely very interesting. I did get my hands on it at the time and played it when it went live. It was a very unique experience for a lot of us in the community. A lot of people were very butthurt, for starters, because you're doing this quest gear for level 60, and people who had full Naxxramas, and at that time it was tier 3, was getting replaced by greens, and the blues were even better. And is there any current expansion or one you're looking forward to that might be around the corner, Vicolan?
They haven't announced anything yet as far as World of Warcraft, which is my main MMORPG. There was Morrowind for the Elder Scrolls Online that I think just recently came out that I wanted to check out.
June 6th.
I haven't played too much ESO, so
It's
I'm
good.
not like super excited to get into it, you know? And it just depends on the price, I guess,
Gotcha.
as to if I'm really going to check it out right now.
I was just gonna say it's launching June 6th, so it's actually next week.
June 6th. Oh, okay. I couldn't remember if it released within the last week or not. But either way, I think at some point I will check it out, just because the Warden class that they're adding reminds me of a Hunter from WoW, and that's my favorite class to play.
I haven't checked much into it. Morrowind just kind of came out of the blue, and like you said, I don't play it that much either, so I haven't really researched into it, which is usually a big thing I do for expansions.
Right. Another game, it's not so much as an expansion, but I guess it would be like a new game, is Destiny 2, which is going to be out later this year. And they're partnering up with Blizzard, and they're going to have it featured on the Blizzard client, which is pretty cool.
I'm gonna try it out on PC. I could have played the original Destiny on my PlayStation 4, but I have not been ever really much of a console gamer. If I'm playing an MMORPG, I don't use a controller. I need my mouse and keyboard. So I'm probably gonna play around with it, especially because there's no subscription involved in that, so it's not gonna hurt me any. I'm just probably gonna have to pay like $60 to $40 when it goes live. Now, for me, of course, because my main is Final Fantasy 14 in about 2 weeks, Stormblood's around the corner. And for me, Stormblood is looking a lot like how Warlords of Draenor was for WoW, in the event that they're revamping the battle system. We're losing stats, gaining stats, and they're revamping a lot of the class UIs and everything. So hopefully this is going to help the game even further. But we'll have to find out. I know for a fact I'll be playing it though when it goes live. Actually, on June 16th is the early access, not when it goes live. But I will be playing it then regardless.
Is there anything in particular in the new expansion that you're looking forward to?
The combat changes are really interesting. They're revamping just as a whole. It's helping like all the classes. It's helping a lot of the complaints that players have, which really means that their community is taking, what their customers are saying to heart.
That's good.
Yeah. So now, of course, in expansions, as we've covered in this, there's a lot of things to look forward in an expansion. What would you say, Vicolan, do you look forward to the most?
I mean, really just new content.
New content.
Anything new.
Gotcha. I mean,
that's a pretty wide spectrum of things, but yeah, just new content.
Well, and that's mainly the reason why everyone gets hyped for them. It's because it's new. It's brand new, has new content, and everyone's going to be starting on a blank page. Some will be higher level, but everyone's on a blank page. Now, of course, with an expansion, there's good, the bad. Is there anything you don't look forward to in an expansion?
I mean, not really. I say this now, but like, I really enjoy leveling, except for after I've leveled up my 12th level 110 in WoW.
Gets a little
And
repetitive.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I do enjoy leveling.
Yeah, and you know what? I'd have to say, the grinding out your levels as fast as you can isn't half bad for your first character. But, your fourth, your fifth, you're just like, just get this level. And a problem in Stormblood, or not Stormblood, in Heavensward I had, is that the XP was terrible. So getting your main to 60 was fine. Everything else after that, the stuff that we used to rely on for XP that were huge sources, just didn't cut it. Eventually they did fix that issue. The other thing for me sometimes is the nostalgia of letting go of that old gear, like the raid gear that you've grinded out and worked hard for. It's even a problem in 14, just seeing like, you after a few quests or maybe after a few levels, that top end gear gets replaced. It's just like, you just got replaced by low quality gear. Granted, there's going to be new raid gear once we get to max level, but that in-between phase is kind of annoying. And then probably the last thing to talk about here is expansions for a community are usually expected, at least of an MMO that seems to be doing pretty well or has, a decent fan base to keep the game running. What would you think would be an appropriate amount of time before you need to hear that a new expansion's coming out? How long does the current expansion need to ride out before you're like, okay, we need a new one?
I would say maximum 2.5 years. I would prefer about 2 years. And as far as like announcing like a new expansion, I would like to know like at least like a year to a year and a half after the new expansion is out.
Fair.
For them to announce the future expansion.
Yeah, I think for us, this is about 2 years because Heaven's Lord launched about the same time, and I got to find out about it back, I want to say November. I think it was before that. I went to FanFest, which is for 14. It was kind of like our version of a BlizzCon, but only dedicated to 14. It was just a really great feeling to know that we knew this was going to happen, and we got enough teasers and stuff. There was a really great event, and just to hear about that expansion coming out.
Yeah, like when they announce new expansions for a while, I get so hyped for it, and anytime they put out new information about it, or if there's someone that does YouTube videos for them, like I remember back for Cataclysm when we were waiting for that to come out, I watched Total Biscuit back when he was doing World of Warcraft videos, and I absolutely loved his videos. I was so sad when he stopped doing the videos for a while, but yeah, I just get really hyped for the WoW expansions.
Alright, and that of course brings us to the end of this podcast here. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment down below. We do not have any community comments to share in this video. All you have to do to get shared in this video is when we post about the subject of our podcast, it's just comment on the social media on that, and you can be featured in the closing here. And don't forget to subscribe to Vicolan's channel and my channel. And look forward to next month when we discuss our next topic, which is going to involve role-playing in MMORPGs. And any final words, Vicolan?
Not really. Just about the community questions. Like he said, our next topic's going to be on role-playing. So if you have any comments or questions that you would like us to address, just leave them down below in the comments here, or you can tweet at us on our Twitters.
All right. Well, and as always, it's been a pleasure, and we'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.